Hi everyone, and welcome back to the René of Paris channel. My name is Abby Andrew, and I'm the alopecia ambassador for this channel, meaning I talk about wigs and hair loss topics from the perspective of someone who has experienced hair loss for most of my life. In today's video, I'm actually going to be talking more about something makeup involved, because it's a question that I get asked very often, and it's all about how I do makeup for my brows. As you'll see in a moment, because I have alopecia, my brows are actually very sparse, so I choose to fill them in with brow makeup every day. Again, if you do have alopecia and your brows are sparse as well, you should never feel obligated to fill in your brows with makeup unless you want to, but this video is just for anyone who wants to start filling in their brows but doesn't really know where to start. In this video, I'm going to talk about a couple of different methods that you can choose between, and they're really up to what's easiest for you. My preferred method of doing my brows changes over the years just depending on what kind of brow style that I like. Sometimes I like to have thinner brows, sometimes I like thicker brows, sometimes I like them to be more arched, sometimes I like them to be a little bit less arched. And what I like about some of these methods, like doing my eyebrows with a pencil, I really like the flexibility of being able to change my brows on a daily basis, especially depending on what wig I'm wearing. I wear a different wig on pretty much a daily basis, so I really like the options with brows that allow me to have that flexibility of sometimes having thinner brows, sometimes creating more of an arch, and sometimes having lighter or darker brows. For those of you that don't really care about changing your brow style, there's also some really great options, like microblading is something that some people choose to do, which is essentially like getting your eyebrows tattooed on. I don't really know too much about it, but that is something that you can do that's kind of semi-permanent to permanent. That might be a good solution if you don't want to have to worry about doing brow makeup on a daily basis. Personally, I never chose to look into doing microblading because I do like having the flexibility of changing my brow shape and style on a daily basis, so I don't want to commit to just one shape and color, but for some people that just gives them the peace of mind to not have to worry about it on a regular basis. There are quite a few methods that you can use to fill in your brows. There is the pencil method, which is the one that I currently use on a daily basis. There's also the pomade method, where you can use an angled brush and a pomade. And I used to use that for many years, and that's a method that I liked. That one takes a little bit more time and effort, and it's at risk of making the brows too thick and too dark. So I find the pencil is a little bit easier to control. But the good thing about the pomade is that it's really easy to layer as well. So if you want a lighter colored brow on one day, you can just do lighter strokes. And if you want a darker colored brow on another day, you can just kind of layer it to create that darker brow effect. That one is a little bit trickier though. Pencil I also find is just so easy to use and just keep in my makeup bag at all times if I ever need to adjust my brows throughout the day. So that is my preferred method that I will show later in this video. And then I also wanted to talk about eyebrow temporary tattoos. These are relatively new to me, but a lot of people in the hair loss and alopecia communities really swear by these and love to use them. I haven't personally found my preferred brow shape and style, but there are so many that exist that there are a lot of options to explore. I've only tried these a few times, but I will also demonstrate using them in the video just so you can see what other options are out there. The way my brows are right now, this was done with pencil, and I layered it a bit more because I am wearing a darker wig right now, but I will also show the ways that you can use a lighter hand for a blonde wig versus using a more of a layered effect for a darker wig like this one. So let's go ahead and jump right into the first method. This method of doing my eyebrows is actually my current favorite, and that's just using a retractable pencil. You can also use a eyebrow pencil that you have to sharpen with a sharpener. I prefer the retractable ones because it's pretty much always going to be sharp, and you don't have to worry about having a sharpener on you and dealing with the mess of sharpening it on the go. If you are using a pencil that you sharpen, I highly recommend always sharpening it to a fresh point before doing your brows, because it's really helpful to have that very precise tip to create the effect of having individual brow hairs. So I'm starting this part with blonde hair because what I really want to demonstrate here is that this method, in my opinion, is very flexible. So if you have a blonde wig on, you can just do lighter strokes and lighter brows, and then if you switch to a brunette wig, you can just kind of layer that to make more of a darker brow. I really like having flexibility with my brows because I do change my wigs so often. Something else I want to mention is that the product that you use doesn't have to be a high-end product. This is just a drugstore pencil from a company called e.l.f., which is a very cheap makeup brand. You can use whichever you find at your store. What I find really helps a brow pencil last on my face throughout the day is things like using a good primer and a setting spray afterwards. Again, these don't even need to be expensive primer or setting spray, but having a setting spray makes such a difference between my brows rubbing off within a couple hours and lasting throughout the day. My favorite tip that I've learned for making sure your eyebrows are even is to kind of lay out an outline of where you want to put your brows before starting to fill them in. So to find where your brow starts, you can line up the pencil with this part of your nose and go straight up. Make a light mark, and do that on the other side so it's symmetrical. Then you want to put the pencil in the same spot, line it up across your pupil, so it's just going straight across your pupil. And put a mark there. That is going to be the highest part of your arch. Do it on the other side, just right across your pupil, right to the highest part of your arch. And then for the end, line it up with the outer corner of your eye and kind of just go a straight line, and that will be where your brow will end. If you do have some brow hair of your own, you can kind of use that as guidance. I do have some very light brow hair, but it's very sparse and it's very, very blonde. So I like to use that method just to make sure it's going to be symmetrical. Now you can just go ahead and start feathering it in. One of my early mistakes when I started doing my brows was to go in like a straight line, but what I find looks very natural is feathering. So just kind of start drawing very light brow hair lines, kind of at an angle, like so. It might look a little bit unnatural at first, but as you start layering it, that's when it really begins to look like individual brow hairs. I like to choose a color that's kind of a neutral light brown, because then if I'm wearing a blonde wig, I can just use a lighter hand and have it be the brows that I wear for a blonde wig. And then if I'm wearing a darker wig, I just layer it a bit darker. And as I start to get to this part, I do start to kind of angle it downwards. Depending on the wig style that I'm wearing on a given day, sometimes I like thinner brows, sometimes I like thicker brows. And again, that's completely up to your personal preference. The thing I like about the pencil method as opposed to something like the temporary tattoos or getting my eyebrows microbladed, for example, is that I have that flexibility. So if I am wearing a different wig on a given day, or I just want to try a different brow style, I'm not tied to one specific brow shape and color. I have flexibility to change it if I want to. So right now, before I've set it, it's pretty easy to kind of shape it. I can kind of wipe off a little bit with my pinky finger. You can use a makeup wipe and adjust the shape. So you can even just stop there. Sometimes what I like to do to make sure my eyebrows stay matte is I like to put a little bit of translucent powder on top, and then I always use a setting spray, because that is what really helps it last throughout the day. But I will take this one step further and try to layer it with this other product. I find that layering different brow products and colors really helps to make it look even more three-dimensional. So for example, right now I'll just be using this pencil from a company called NYX, where it's almost like a liquid eyeliner, but it's meant for brows. So it kind of has that kind of felt tip like a liquid eyeliner. This I like to use with a really light hand and just put a couple of strokes here and there, because it is at risk of kind of becoming a little too dark. But just a couple of quick little brow strokes, just to make it look a little bit more dynamic. What's nice about products like this is that even if you do something a little bit too dark, before you set it, it's relatively easy to kind of wipe it off or adjust it. A couple of other tips to make sure your brows look even. This is a tip that I like to do that kind of sounds funny, but it is very helpful in my opinion, is I take my phone and I just take a selfie looking straight at my phone, and looking at the photo is actually a little bit easier for me to tell if my eyebrows are symmetrical and even, rather than looking in the mirror. If you want to, you can even go ahead and do that trick that I showed you in the beginning with lining it up and just make sure it stayed consistent. So again, the brow does end where I wanted it to. The arch is where I placed it in the beginning, and the brow still ends where I initially laid it out. So that is still matches what I laid out in the first place. I don't always use a translucent setting powder on my brows, but if you do feel like your brows are looking a little bit shiny, you can just take a fluffy powder brush and any translucent powder with no color or tint to it, and just very, very lightly, just a very small amount, use the brush and just pat it over the brow. I'm not gonna do that right now because my brows don't have any particular shine, but I do like to always have that on hand in my purse in case I need that throughout the day. Sometimes if you do put translucent powder, you might need to then follow up with the brush and just kind of fill them in a little bit more because sometimes it can remove pigment. But once you start doing this, you can kind of start to feel all those things out and it just becomes like second nature. And when I want my brows to last throughout the day, like I said before, I always use a setting spray. Again, it doesn't need to be any sort of expensive setting spray. This is just a cheap drugstore setting spray, but it makes all the difference in the world between my brows only lasting a few hours and my brows lasting for the whole full day without me having to worry about it. When I put the brows on in the first place, I was wearing a lighter blonde color. That was the color Spring Honey Tea on the wig Carson. Personally, when I wear blonde colors, I still do like a bit of a darker brow, so they are already on a little bit of the darker side. But just to demonstrate that you can layer it and darken it for a darker wig shade like this one, all you have to do is just kind of add a couple more brow strokes to create the darker brow effect. Be careful to still make sure you're leaving gaps in between to create the effect of individual brow hairs. For me, what I like to avoid is just having it look like a blocked out line and still kind of have the appearance of the individual strokes. In a situation like this, where I start to feel like the arch of one brow doesn't match the arch of the other, sometimes I just take my finger and just wipe it off, like so, and then just readjust with the pencil. Before you set it, it's very easy to change the brow shape, which I really love that flexibility. And then to give you peace of mind, once you set it, it's not nearly so easy to wipe off the brow. Something else I want to demonstrate is sometimes when it does get a little too blocky like this, for me that is a little bit too close together than I like. Sometimes I just like to take my fingernail, or maybe you can use anything with kind of an edge to it. Nothing sharp, of course, you don't want to be scratching your face, but just a kind of a really soft but thin tip. Sometimes I like to just take my finger and kind of create the gaps again. And then go back in with the pencil to redefine those lines. Even after years of practicing doing brow makeup, there are still some days where I get home at the end of the day and realize my brows were two completely different shapes and I just didn't notice throughout the day. Again, eyebrows are meant to be sisters and not twins, so even with people who have full brows of their own, nobody's eyebrows are completely symmetrical, so don't stress out too much if they're not completely perfect. But tricks like the selfie trick that I mentioned, that one helps me so much because for some reason when I look at the selfie it makes it much more obvious if they're not symmetrical. And just generally practicing, if you want to practice at home when you're not leaving the house or not in a rush to get somewhere, you'll really get used to doing your brows quickly and comfortably. Some days when I don't feel like putting so much time and effort into my brows, I really do like to wear wigs with bangs on those days, or maybe if you're just not confident doing brow makeup in general, it is kind of nice to have a side bang that kind of obscures the brow if it isn't perfectly even, like with this one. Or even with full bangs. Full bangs really just give the peace of mind of the brows not really being too noticeable if you don't feel comfortable doing your brow makeup yet. But again, all of those things are just to give you peace of mind. You shouldn't have to be overly concerned about your brows looking perfectly matched or even filling in your brows at all if you don't want to. It's all up to your personal preference and what makes you feel comfortable. Now, just to show you another option, I am going to try out the temporary brow tattoos. I've only tried these a few times, so I'm still learning myself how to use them, but these are a really great option for those of you that don't want to have to worry about them being symmetrical or being precise with the individual brow hairs like you do have to with a pencil or pomade method. These can also, in my opinion, be a little bit tricky to apply because even though you don't have to worry about the shape being symmetrical, the first time I put these on, I put them on at kind of different rotated angles. So one was on one angle and one was kind of rotated up. It kind of felt like in a video game when you're designing a character and you can like rotate the brows. It felt like one was straight and one was kind of rotated that way. And I think you'll see what I mean when I go to apply them right now. Once you pick your eyebrow shape that you want to go for, they come on these multi-packs. So what you want to do is just cut out the brows that you want to use, just one of each side. So just take a scissor and just kind of snip those out. And then once you have them cut out, you apply them pretty much the same way you would with any temporary tattoo. So you want to have a cup of water handy and any sort of cloth or tissue to kind of pat the water on to make it damp. So when you're ready, you would just peel off this plastic part here and put that side against your eyebrow. What's nice about these is they do have the paper example on the other side to help you line it up. And then you use the cloth to just dampen it completely and hold it for about maybe 30 seconds or so, and then you can go ahead and peel it off. You'll have best results if you're applying them with no makeup underneath, so I went ahead and took off the brow product that I already had on. So make sure you have your damp napkin or washcloth ready, so when you peel off the plastic back and put it in place, you have it ready to just start dampening it. Again, when you start dampening the temporary tattoo, you don't want it to be drenched, but just damp enough for it to transfer. So when you're ready, just kind of peel off the back like so. And then put it in place. Now this part I do struggle with a little bit. Again, this is maybe like the third time I've put these on, so this is just to demonstrate that this is an option. So you're gonna wanna put it in place and then just take the damp cloth and start to dab it like so. You want to make sure you hold it very still because you can end up warping the shape of the brow if you slide it while it's in place. Let's see. Okay, I wonder if I can just leave that on while I put the next one on. Let's just try it out. There are some amazing wig and alopecia influencers on Instagram who use these and create beautiful makeup looks for them. So I highly recommend going on Instagram and just following a couple of profiles that do makeup with alopecia. Danny G Makeup is a really great one. She's the one that actually introduced me to these, and she does some amazing makeup looks with these. So if you want to learn more about them, you can maybe check her out. You see, this part is where it's really hard to make them symmetrical, but let's just give it a shot. Okay. This is why I like my my tried and true pencil method, but it really just depends what you feel comfortable with, because some people swear that these are much easier, and for me, I just find the pencil is so much easier to fix any mistakes that happen while you're working, whereas with these, once they're on, it's a little bit hard to adjust them. So we shall see how this turns out. Okay, I'll go ahead and, yeah, I don't know, I can already tell these probably won't be symmetrical, but let's go ahead and take this off. Okay. I definitely do like the effect of the individual brow hairs, so if you're not comfortable drawing them on yourself with pencil, this might be a good solution. I think I did accidentally leave the tail on a piece here, so this one didn't come off perfectly. And then, like that. And this one might have gotten bent while I was putting it on. So in my opinion, I'm still learning how to apply these, and I do struggle with them a little bit. But once you get used to the shape that you like and you get used to applying them, they might be a really great option. This is what happens every time I apply these though, is I feel like they both went on a little too angry looking, whereas if I had just done this with pencil, I could just like wipe off that angry looking arch and readjust, whereas these can be a little bit hard to take off. You can get them off with just some makeup remover, but in my experience, it does kind of require a little bit more scrubbing. which is kind of a good and a bad thing at the same time, because that means they can last. They have really good lasting power, but then if you do want to adjust them, it's a little bit more difficult. As you can see, once you apply these, they do come on a little shiny. And again, there are so many different brands and styles of these that there might be other brands that you prefer. This was just a random one that I found online, so I don't have too much experience with these. But with the shine, you can kind of tame that a bit with some translucent powder. So again, these might be a good option for you. I do personally prefer the pencil method. So that's all for this video. I hope that you found some helpful tips for doing your brows if you're someone that has alopecia, some other hair loss condition, or if you just have sparse brows and want to experiment with different types of makeup. If you have any other questions, definitely feel free to leave them in the comments below, and definitely also let us know your preferred method of doing your brows. Do you like to use the temporary tattoos? Do you like to use the pencil or pomade? Have you ever tried microblading? Definitely let us know in the comments below. To stay up to date with all of our latest wig tips and tutorials, definitely subscribe to us on YouTube and follow us on Instagram for all sorts of other tips. Thank you so much for watching this video, and we will see you in the next one.